Hey,
Hi,
Hey
nice to
Jeff,
meet you.
to meet you too. Hey, how's it going, Sam?
good.
Just
So,
All right,
we could,
I'll let you guys go. I'm gonna go on mute here.
okay.
Cool.
So we're 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 friends because of Substack. I guess you know that, and we're here to talk about Starship Casual and the Bittman project and whatever else. But I'm pretty sure I'm the formal interviewer and you're the formal interviewee. So,
Well, okay,
I
that's a
mean,
relief.
if you want to switch roles at any point, just feel free. Um, so I love thing and the Dear Jeffy stuff and I suppose we'll have to edit this out, but the Substack people are always saying to me you should be more like Jeff Tweedy. So
No, they're not.
they really are. They're like you should be doing audio letters to your fans. So
That's weird. I mean, I spend a lot of time singing to, I don't know, my voice is a part of the equation, so I don't know.
right. Well, there's something, I mean, there is something warm and endearing about audio. I mean, it's different for you because you do spend your time singing, but the little snippets are yeah, they're warm. They're really nice.
Well, thank you. You know, I enjoy it. I enjoy
It's
the
clear.
yeah, it's a little I lean into the goofiness of it a little bit, because I think it is uh, a little strange acknowledging these real roles that I've never been completely comfortable with, like being on stage is ironically something I've never been completely comfortable with. I'm not David Lee Roth or,
Yeah,
I'm not a guy that's, just feels like he deserves fans or something, or like wants to wants to really embrace the idea of me having fans. So it's kind of a detached way of calling yourself the captain and having clients or thinking instead of fans. um, Adds a little. This just makes it a little. I don't know. To me, it's just kind of an acknowledgement that there's something artificial about that relationship to begin with.
right.
Like
You're sort of
the stage versus the audience.
right. Yeah, you're sort of embracing the irony of it.
Well, I mean, I think that was like the. I mean, that's part of what grows out of the experience of the pandemic for me. Um, was just a horrible, horrible thing, but it's like we don't have any kind of monoculture anymore for anything. We don't have anything that we all experience at the same time in the same way through the same lens. And the pandemic ultimately proved to be that still, because we did manage to somehow divide it up into different experiences and choose sides and teams, which is really, it's kind of heartbreaking. But initially it really felt like um, uh, God, there aren't any stages anymore. There isn't any hierarchy anymore.
Right.
This is a scary thing, and almost everybody in the world is scared of the same thing at the same time. That to me seemed like a, kind of beautiful in a weird way, you know?
Yeah. Well, it did sort of take us back to a time when we were all concerned about the same stuff, which doesn't seem to be. quite the case anymore in general.
No, and it was squandered pretty quickly, I think,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, let me try to transition this to. I want to talk to you. I mean, I feel like I, I speaking of fans. I mean, I've liked your stuff. I've listened to your stuff since the Uncle Tupelo days. So um, I do. I don't get to talk to musicians that often, and I do have some questions, and especially for you because I do. I don't. Yeah, I don't want to like
Oh, go
establish
on.
that barrier, but
Go on.
um, I'm wondering. I do have a question. I have a couple questions here. So it's like, does the term alt country mean anything to you, or is it just, there is traditional bluegrass and there's the stuff of country music stations, and then there's the flag waving and drunkenness and the
Mhm.
cheating and all this kind of stuff that Elvis Costello kind of made fun of in that Almost Blue album,
Mhm.
and then there's like what you've done, and I don't know whether you, I mean, Giant Sand is sort of in that space, I think, a little bit, and Johnny Cash even in his later years, this kind of, it has a similar sound. There's slide guitar and there's picking and maybe banjo, but the lyrics are less cliched, and really, I think the real question is, because you seem sort of uncategorizable. I mean, some of Love Is the King, your most recent release is incredibly spare, and anyone who knows you would say, "Oh yeah, this is a Jeff Tweedy thing." But then some is almost straight country, and some is, I don't know, navel gazing rock, if that's not too insulting. And then there's like real 4-piece band stuff, like old rock and roll, like Natural Disaster. I'm thinking of.
Mhm.
So here's the question: are you sort of genre busting like the Beatles? Because that's how I think of you, as like you go way past any. To call you alt country is so simplistic.
I've always bristled at most um, genre classifications, like I've never really understood why you need to do that as an artist, um, except to interface with commerce,
Right,
except
radio
to
stations
or,
especially,
or
right?
record stores, which bins they put you in, and things like that. And I don't. I mean, I seem to respond to a lot of different types of genres, a lot of different types of music, and usually, um, the if you dig deep enough in any genre, there are the artists that sound like themselves inside that genre, and they're the ones that are the best. And then there are the ones that sort of sound like that the best. Like in reggae, there are a handful of people that make, well, not only a handful, but there are the great originators of it, and then lots of idiomatic musics become very academic at some point, and people become, you know, gatekeepers for authenticity and things like that. And I have no interest in any of that. I don't. I think country music is definitely in that place where there are some people making up the rules of what's classified as country, and that's been that way for a long, long, long time.
Mm.
But to me, I respond to the weirdness of people sitting on their porch and singing songs about murder, you know, and like, and that there was a weird impulse to use the instruments and hand that they could get their hands on. That's always the case with like kind of the best origination stories of different types of music. It wasn't like there aren't a lot of choices really being made. It's making noise with what was at hand,
Right.
you know. Like jazz, in New Orleans, in these military bands, and like all this brass instruments being introduced to uh, the sons and daughters of slaves and things, like like in these weird like kind of collisions of things. And that's always way more interesting to me than somebody who is an artist that sets out to fit into something, that's like makes choices to um, sound like I don't know. I always say country music is the least interesting to me when it tries to sound like itself.
Right, when it tries to sound like country music.
Yeah. And the same was true of hardcore punk rock. All the bands that were really conforming to like the idea of what hardcore punk rock were all mostly forgotten, and we remember bands like the Minutemen, which were like weird,
Right.
wild. Why were they lumped into that group? It was like just kind of proximity and a record label and other outside factors that kind of included them in that scene, but they transcended it.
Who are you listening to these days?
Um, let's see. I like Loren has a new record out. It's a really beautiful, talk about kind of a classic country sounding record and songwriting wise. That um, it's called Leftovers. A lot of female artists are how to be even more clear. I'm not listening to that many men sing hardly at all these days. It's like Faye Webster and Kate LeBon and you know just like there's just so many like grouper. There's just so many women making really interesting music, and there's something much more, I don't know, um, fresh sounding about the approach on a lot of the records I'm hearing coming out of that world.
I kind of get that. It's funny. I was reading a piece yesterday about the 30 best books of 2021 so far, or something like that. And literally 25 of them were written by women. I mean, so was the article written by a woman. So,
Yeah.
but still, that would not have happened 10 years ago. So that,
Yeah.
um, you know, well, I guess I want to ask one more sort of pure music question before I start to transition to food. Um, and it's really just like curiosity. So I was listening to sort of my greatest hits of yours, which I'll get to the other day. But Black Moon, which is among them, starts with this little finger pick riff and this beautiful slide guitar, and then it becomes more and more and more rich and complex. I think there's even a keyboard and then a cello and other strings,
Yeah.
and it becomes orchestral and even like you could say symphonic, right?
Mhm.
So I just want to know what happens. Like I'm guessing this starts with you finger picking and singing a song.
Mhm.
But is that complexity in your head, or is that post production? And not to,
Mhm.
I don't mean to be like harping on the Beatles
Mhm.
stuff, but is this like George Martin steps in and says, here's what we're going to do with this song, and we're going to turn it from a really simple fingerpicky song into like this beautiful orchestral thing? What stage does that happen at?
On that song, I mean, uh, it was a pretty simple finger picked song, and I think a lot of times it's not necessarily that you have a big orchestral arrangement in mind. Um, for me, it's more like something there. Uh, the musical landscape isn't reflecting the lyrics in a way that makes it feel three dimensional to me. And sometimes they are just with an acoustic guitar. Sometimes that's the intimacy that you need to get the lyrics to resonate. And sometimes in a song like Black Moon, it was like I asked Pat in our band if he would help come up with a string arrangement because he does a lot of kind of string parts on the keyboards, and we ended up using real strings to get the sense of dark black dunes of sand and just some sort of um, I don't know, bombed out lunar landscape or something,
Mhm.
sounding. That's, I mean, it's still representational to me in a way, like I think that that's pretty old fashioned, but I kind of like the music to sound like some of the images. And so that was an effort on that song to get closer to the lyrical content, I guess.
Yeah. Um, I love that song, and I can't. That was what was the day that I was listening to that stuff? I guess it was we were driving back. So if I was, excuse me, that was Sunday. So that song has been in my head since Sunday. I hate when that happens.
I'm
Actually,
sorry.
it's great though. So this is my attempt to transition to food. There are people who say, um, I mean, I've done thousands of recipes, better known for some than for others, but many. And I'm not comparing recipes to songs. It's much easier, and I think certainly easier for me. Um, but people do have favorites, and so here's my transition, because when people tell me my favorite their favorite recipes of mine, sometimes I don't remember the recipe, or it's kind of generic.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's like, I mean, people's most favorite recipe of mine, people will say, I really love your pancake recipe, which is like the most generic recipe there is. Um, and sometimes it's this particularly odd thing that tells me a little about them. Whether they like complexity, whether they like intense flavors, whether they like something really, really simple, something that's completely honest and unpretentious, and so on. So now I'm going to tell you my favorite Jeff Tweedy songs or Wilco songs, and you can tell me eh, how generic they are
Yeah.
or whatever. Ready? So it's funny. A lot of them are from Yankee
Well,
Hotel Foxtrot.
Black Moon's a deep cut,
Black Moon is might be my number one. Heavy metal drummer I've probably listened to with my younger daughter 500 times. I'm
Hmm.
trying to break your heart. Radio Cure, so
Hmm.
depressing but so fabulous. Bad Day Lately,
Yeah,
Sky
nice.
Blue Sky, California Sun, which I know is a little. I don't know how
Stars.
you feel about it.
Yeah.
Um, Box Full of Letters, Jesus, etc., and um, even I can see, and I'm the man who loves you. I'm the man who loves you.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
So you want me to psychoanalyze you from your
it'd
list?
be so much fun. Yeah.
Um, uh, well, I think that you are sentimental a little
Yeah, I
bit.
am. Yeah, that's good.
Um, uh, I mean, that's a pretty solid list of songs that I think we play a lot because a lot of people like them, and that would be uh, not. I wouldn't call it, if I'm using the food analogy, I wouldn't call it standard fare, but maybe standard fare for Wilco, you know,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
uh, no, I don't know. I don't know if I'm comfortable like digging in too deep on anybody's psyche just based on some tunes they like, but I think that you do also have some uh newer songs in there, and uh which would lead me to believe that you're fairly comfortable with your age and where you've grown to be. I think that the way that some bands age upsets the audience, and it becomes harder to follow along, especially when they see images of their favorite band getting older and wider
right.
and and um, and just reflecting a little bit of what they see in the mirror. I think that kind of undermines a little bit of the magic that's there from, like maybe listening to an old record, like visiting with an old friend and reliving the old days or something like
Right.
that. But I think that if somebody listens to our new records or comes along and they really kind of listen and embrace something that we're working on, they're either coming to it kind of fresh, or that they're a fan that's been around a long time and has maintained a certain amount of grace with their passage through time.
Well, you're not a Wilco tribute band.
Yeah.
You're not playing Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, which is what, 20 years old at this point?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
not playing it over. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure there's songs we play, but I was thinking earlier this week, I'm not asking you this question, but I was thinking of saying Beatles or Stones, and I thought it's kind of interesting because
Mhm.
the Beatles were so short-lived, and yet what a moment. And the Stones have become a Stones tribute band, and it's really not very interesting. I mean, I don't know what you think, but um, so
I
the
think.
fact that you're growing
Mhm.
speaks volumes about how comfortable you are with your age, and how creative and wonderful your band is. So it's really
Yeah, no, I
something.
love, I love, I have more energy for it, and I love doing it more and appreciate it more than I did when I was in my 20s, So I feel like rock and roll is really one of the only um, job descriptions that doesn't really reward experience too much. Like, I think nobody expects their visual arts to be done only by young idols, or
Right.
that are certainly authors don't have a like an age out kind of clause in their relationship with their audience. But music has a especially because it's a pop culture thing, has an image that's associated with it, that's part of youth culture. So that's just something you have to sidestep if you want to stick around for a while.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
interesting. This sort of first album is the best album syndrome.
Mhm. But
Um,
as far as Beatles versus Stones, I mean, I think luckily we don't have to make that decision.
no, we don't.
Kind of both around. I mean, in different ways, and you know, to me, Paul McCartney is out there when he plays. It's similar to the way the Stones kind of present themselves. It's like he doesn't particularly challenge an audience a whole lot. I don't think. I think
No.
Paul's like there, and he really loves being loved and loves. I think understandably so, and I think it's righteous in a way that if you hold the keys to that many people's joy, you know, how would you withhold them?
Right.
Like when he stands on stage in front of an audience, and you can unlock that much just pure joy. Um, Seems almost sociopathic to deny it.
Well, I mean, I'm going to just take issue with that because some people want to grow for their own fulfillment. And
Hmm.
I mean, sure, you're right. But he also doesn't seem to be driven to explore new hidden crevices of his consciousness or his
Right.
music or anything like that, and hasn't for 50 years, 40
Yeah, it's
years
been a long
anyway.
time. I mean,
Yeah.
but I would imagine that he probably can get it somewhere else. I don't know, get some of that satisfaction from other things, and um, I'm just. I think that's the amazing thing about Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan holds that same set of keys.
Yeah.
and and instead of handing over those keys or like turning those locks every night, he's making new locks. He's like forcing he's
Right.
like he's forcing people to contemplate the puzzle again,
Right.
on a nightly basis. And I love him to death for it, and that's a more inspiring career path for someone like me, for some reason. But in some ways, it might just be the hand they're dealt physiologically. Even, like I don't know if Dylan was ever going to be the guy that could really recreate those things over and over and over,
Right.
like with
Play the same
precision.
song twice.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Okay, food.
yeah.
So, uh, who does the cooking in your house?
My wife does almost all of the cooking in
This
our
is
house.
Susie, I take it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, our family, I have to say, it has a pretty odd relationship with food. We don't cook a whole lot. We eat out a lot, and I bring food home. I'm at the loft every day at the where I am today right now, and
Right.
there are there's a pretty vast repertoire of decent things to order from here, and a lot of times when I leave here, I'm taking home, you know, ramen or things that are around here, and we have a lot of, you know, nights that are sort of designated as different types of night, sushi night or whatever like that. So it's incredibly disappointing for this conversation, I guess. I apologize.
um,
Uh, you know,
I can still do it. Don't worry.
eh.
Um, so what are the things that what are the nights? What are your favorite things to be eating?
Well, um, I mean, our family loves Chicago pizza, honest to God. You know, just like not unabashedly so. And there are a lot of different pizza places that we like, and not of all of them are Chicago style, but there are. You know, it seems like we're living in the golden age of pizza at this.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly people talk about it enough.
Yeah, so that's you know, I'm sure that's like me telling, are you telling me that you wish we played Louie Louie more often?
Yeah, that's a song I don't have to hear anymore, actually.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's a uh, you know, we when she cooks, it's usually really uh, kind of good old fashioned Jewish food, you know, like like a nice stew or things like that, and
Right.
you know, we have a couple of simple things that we do make occasionally that we just call the dish. And the dish is just, you know, brown rice, avocado, scallions, and some sesame oil and some chopped up tomatoes and stuff like that. And
It sounds pretty good.
surprisingly, it's surprising, you know, it's really
Yeah.
simple stuff.
So then so this is like, what if you were in asking me, yeah, what music do you play when you're
Yeah.
sitting around? And I'd be like, House of the Rising Sun.
Yeah, no, we you know, we have a this is an ongoing conversation in our house that somebody needs to learn how to cook more. And it's not like not my wife. It's like she's, you know, aiming it at our 21-year-old son who still lives with us, and Spencer, who is, you know, he's 25. He doesn't live with us anymore. He probably cooks more than we do, but as a family, just it's, I don't know. Maybe it's because of the travel. I think that I've just gotten so used to eating out almost all the time,
Right.
and and because of that, I guess, you know, my wife cooked a lot more when the kids were younger too, and especially when I was gone, she would, you know, feed the family uh, like without ordering out all the time. But since they've gotten older, and you know, I come home from the road, and it's sort of a celebration, and it's like it's initially it just the ball gets rolling right off the bat when I get home because it's like, oh, I haven't had anything from Chicago in a long time. So uh, it's a weird dynamic, and I feel shame. I feel shame about
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry. We can send you some cookbooks if you like, if you want
Oh,
to
you know,
try.
that's the crazy thing. I think we have your cookbooks, and we just need to open them and work towards a better lifestyle.
Well, how much are you touring? And maybe you could talk a little bit about eating on the road while you're at it.
Well,
I mean, I
the
guess you weren't touring for
I wasn't touring
18
for
months
the
or
18
whatever.
months, and that was the longest I have been in one place in my entire adult life, you know, because I started touring and playing shows um, around the country at around 18, 19 years old, and 54 now. So um, it's not a great excuse for not learning how to cook, but it's the one I
That's,
have.
that's what, were you touring 200 nights a year back
A
then,
lot
that
of the
kind of
years we
thing?
were averaging like 180 shows a year.
That's just,
Yeah, so that's the established pattern. Um, like everybody else, we did probably or Susie cooked a lot more during the pandemic too, especially early on when it wasn't clear how safe it was to get food outside of the house and things like that. Uh, but Yeah, I don't know. On the road, it's really hard. You have to really be careful, otherwise you gain weight no matter what, no matter
right.
how hard you're working on stage. And just having after, we always we call it second dinner because you always end up eating after the show, no matter how late it is. And and that's partially because for me, I cannot eat for hours and hours before the show. I just don't like getting on stage feeling really full. So I have the last meal before the show would probably be around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I don't eat again until we get off stage and stuff. So I don't know if that's interesting at all, but
That's, I mean,
it creates a weird pattern. You don't eat a lot of hot food at that hour either, you know,
that hour being midnight, later than
midnight or
midnight.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially
And
when
it's
you
just like whatever you can lay your hands on kind of thing.
we kind of plan ahead. A lot of times that's why it's not hot, is because you kind of order from the places that can close while you're on stage, and you know the tour manager or somebody makes sure everybody gets something from like a local Chinese place or you know someplace like that. And you know I'm not complaining because you know we do what we do pretty comfortably these days, and we you know there are a lot of it's better, way better than it was in the old days. There are way more restaurants to order from than there ever were, especially for takeout.
Right. I
Um,
was just having this conversation with someone about how much better takeout. Like, first of all, people are willing to spend more money on takeout than they used to because for a while we had no choice.
mhm.
But then restaurants have gotten really, really good at it. Like, good
Yeah,
restaurants now do great takeout. And
right.
yeah, it's changed. It's really changed.
It's changed, and you know, in Europe, it was always really, really hard in Europe. Not just like in England, when I first started touring, it was really hard to get a vegetable. I, you know, on the road,
Yeah,
it really was. And
right.
now it's pretty amazing. It's pretty good trucks, you know, like truck stops on the motorway or whatever. You can get the salad, you know.
Right.
Uh, but again, like in lots of you know European countries like Italy and places like that, it's sort of surprising how early everything closes, um, and it's also kind of surprising in places like Spain how nothing's open at 9 p.m. but they'll be open at 10.
Right. Yeah,
You
Spain
know,
would be good. Spain would be a good place to be touring, I would imagine.
it is a good place. Yeah, that's like you can actually go out and sit
Go
in a
out.
restaurant after a show there. Yeah.
Um, Last question, because I know you have to go. And I ask everybody this. So, what did you eat for dinner last night?
I actually had stew last night
So,
for dinner,
Susie cooked.
and it was um. Oh, you're frozen there for a second.
Yeah, you froze. You
Is it
froze for a
my
second
end?
too.
Okay. Um, yeah, Susie cooked a nice like s- just straight up stew. You know, you know, meat, potatoes, carrots, kind of what you get at Manny's in here in Chicago.
I don't know what Manny's is, but I
Manny's
guess
is
I
like a
get the
Jewish
idea.
deli. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess